This is Hidden Gems, where we break down what your past champions mean for your current revenue. We analyzed over 5,000 deals. Tune in to find out what that could mean for your team. This is the limited series from UserGems called Hidden Gems, and we are digging into the revenue numbers behind what your past customers and your users, aka your hidden gems, where they have a huge potential to positively impact your revenue. So today we are talking with Pegram, one of the rockstar senior AEs at UserGems, to talk about multi-threading. She and I talk about this a lot, but we're talking today especially about deals, multi-threading deals that involve previous champions. So Caroline, we need your 60-second take on this.
Yeah, for sure. So if you're a seller, you've probably heard of multi-threading. I feel like it's kind of a buzzword right now, for good reason, because I think it's more important now than ever. But what this means, Krysten, what you and I talk about is just including more people in the buying process proactively instead of relying on just one point of contact. And especially important right now since every dollar that's spent is scrutinized and more people have to have buy-in. But there are a lot of ways to do this, and everyone kind of has their own version or own spin of on this. So I think it's super important to be having these conversations because the knowledge sharing about your process and my process, it's different. And I know that we've both adopted our processes because of the different ways that we've done this.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, I think sales leaders have always coached their teams to do multi-threading. I think it's something people always know that they need to do, like in theory, but how to do it. And even just the hard numbers about like how important it is. And you're right, everybody is looking carefully at budgets. Buyers are definitely more careful, I would say skeptical now. With budgets being tighter, you don't want your name attached to a project that doesn't work. And also, we are seeing more and more buyers involved in the whole process, right? Enterprise, that's always been the case, but even now mid-market is getting thrown in there too. Average buying committee has gone from 7 to now 12 people. And on top of that, people are staying shorter amounts of time at jobs, right? So the champions that we even have in the organization are on the move constantly. So I know we're going to talk about the hard data, but anecdotally, I'm just wondering how you're seeing this affect you right now.
I think it affects a lot of areas. I think more than anything, we need to be removing risk at every step. And this can look different depending on who you're talking to. It could be risk in implementation or risk with adoption or risk with budget. But specifically with multi threading, I think there's been a fundamental shift with how people buy. It used to be people could buy on FOMO. Now people have a bigger fear of messing up. So one way to remove the risk of messing up is by working with our prospects to start thinking through what teams are going to be affected by your tech or by your product and start building a buying committee with your prospect. I love getting their input on this because I think that they know better than anyone the different personalities that they have internally and the people that they want to build their buying team with. I think from there it is also important for us as sellers to do our own due diligence and bring some suggestions. So I'll always reference people who I think should be part of the buying committee. My criteria is always, do they have UserGems within the company? Is there someone that can actually vouch for using us? From there, any new leadership and departments that we would be working with or promotions, these people are often maybe a bit more likely to take calls, maybe have some budget for new tech. So that's kind of the process and like how it has changed my approach with selling.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the advice has always been to multi-thread because it does reduce the risk for our champions and influencers because it gives them safety in numbers, right? But it also reduces the risk for sellers pretty significantly. So if we look at the data, so at UserGems, we analyze over 5,000 opportunities to find out and really quantify the impact of multi-threading, especially when it comes to previous champions. So, I mean, just in general, we know that multi-threaded deals are going to have a 5x higher win rate. And it also a 57% higher deal size. You've got more people involved. You've got more budget to pull from. You've got more people agreeing so that a bigger dollar value can be attached to it and it feels like less risk. So on our team, we view it as best practice to multi-thread every deal. It just makes sense.
Yeah. I'm always surprised about how many deals don't get multi-threaded because it does leave so many sellers at risk of being in touch with just one relationship. And I think we have a very unique perspective on this through our data tests. But we do see that more than 70% of opportunities only have one single point of contact, which is wild because when we run those data tests, we actually see how many of them have champions that have left open opportunities. And that is next to impossible to come back from, which is why continuously multi-threading throughout the deal is so important.
Yeah, oh god. I think every seller has lost a deal when somebody leaves. And so yeah, if you
Mhm.
just have one person you're communicating with, that you can just kiss that one goodbye. But I think it's a really important call out to think about not just why multi-threading is best practice in general, but also why we still need to multi-thread even if we have a hidden gem involved, even if they are a past buyer or past customer. And I think part of that is people really haven't thought and haven't had a way to quantify how valuable multi-threading actually is when you are still working with a previous champion. There really wasn't a lot of research, so we just simply didn't know. Earlier in one of these series, we talked about previous champions. When they're involved in a deal, those deals have a 114% higher win rate. And that reinforces that these champion relationships are so important when sellers are closing deals. And it obviously confirms that value of maintaining that relationship with your champion as they move to new companies. So with a champion, you definitely have a higher chance of winning, even if you happen to be single threaded. But because we know single threading is dangerous, even when we have a champion, best practice is always be multi threading.
For sure. That actually makes me think of something that heard a couple months back. Basically, multi-threading is all the rage right now, but equally important with building your buying committee is building it with the right people, which is why looping in champions is the best way, in my opinion, or in my experience, to do this. And I know that we oftentimes get pushback from people wanting to track champions that are below the line or like product users. But I think we see time and time again that when people are looking to buy tools, if you have someone in your team that can vouch for that tool, even if they're a user, that's the lowest risk way of doing business.
Right. Exactly. And I think not only is there some pushback around like do we really need to track below the line buyers or influencers as part of these deals? Does it really help? Does that count as multi-threading?
Mhm.
I think there's also pushback around multi-threading because people feel like it increases the amount of people who can say no,
Mhm.
right? But the research really backs up that the more people involved, the better off you are, even if you have somebody who's championing that deal. So with multi-threaded deals that also have a previous champion involved, you get an additional 63% higher win rate and an additional 66% higher deal size because you're not just leaning on that one past buyer, past user. We're helping them broaden and gain consensus in their own organization. So it makes it more likely that those deals get won and come in at a higher dollar value.
Yeah. I think as a rep, I think the two most important things that we can be doing is find previous champions or gems because they are truly going to be your warmest entry points into your target accounts. And then, second to that, multi thread the rest of the buying group. The data proves that if you do those two steps, you can 9x your win rate and it results in 2.5 times higher or bigger deal sizes versus when you do neither.
Yeah, I mean, you think about folks doing neither one of those, you think about how many millions of dollars are being left on the table whenever their win rates could just increase dramatically by
Yeah.
just doing those two things that you broke down so neatly. So I think just to kind of sum up our whole conversation, it's great to have those gems in our accounts, right? Those past buyers and past users, but relying on them solely to carry these to the finish line is just not enough, especially now. And so we don't want to ask them to just sell alone, right? It's risky for them, and we as sellers it's also risky for us. We miss out if we don't multi-thread and then tap into those existing champion relationships and help that champion do the internal selling work that they're going to have to do to get something done. So stay tuned for another episode of Hidden Gems. This time we're going to be talking about and spilling all the secrets about how many touches you need to get the best results for when you reach out to those champions, those past buyers. And I think as sellers, sometimes we think, oh, I just reach out once and it'll be a no-brainer. They loved us so much. Little spoiler alert, it's probably more than you think, but we're going to give you all of the details so that you can get in there and win those deals.